All right, praise the Lord, everybody. Amen. We certainly thank the Lord for being in this house one more time. We thank the Lord for those of you that are joining us via live stream. As always, we want you to know that we are glad that you are with us on this evening. We thank you for taking time out of your evening to share about an hour or 45 minutes or so with us, and so we're very appreciative. And we certainly thank God for all that He has done, all that He's doing. We thank the Lord for the prayer that has gone on before we went live. And so we thank the Lord for all that He is doing and all that He has done. All right, we're continuing to deal with the formation of the nation and how our individual actions impact not only us, but those that are around us, our family, and there's things in our family histories that we're still dealing with today. I was talking to one of my older cousins from down in Louisiana. Uh, it would have been the end of last week, and they talked about how in our family tree, the particular slave master, I'm not going to get into the names and all that stuff, but the particular slave master, that family was very cruel, very mean, just vicious, and so there was certain type of personality traits that developed me because of that. You ever meet somebody in your family, they ain't gonna take nothing off nobody? There's a reason for that. I believe that our hard wiring inside of us sometimes deals with the life experience of our forefathers and foreparents. Because it's interesting that as we go through here and we look at the individual, the family, the community, the nation, and how all of this is interacting in the formation of the nation of Israel. Uh, it's very interesting to note how uh, a prevailing spirit or attitude flows through families. Um, and when we look at Absalom, uh, how he plotted uh, to kill his brother, uh, whether he meant to kill him initially or just wanted to punish him, we don't know. But we know what he did do, that he killed him. Uh, so in chapter 15, Absalom has been dealing with, from his perspective, an absent father. Uh, Even though he's self-exiled, uh, he was still holding something against his father. And when we left off last week, he was forming a coup. He was turning the hearts of the people to himself. He was standing at the gates and saying things like, hey, if I were appointed a judge, you'd get a fair deal, and implying that my father's probably not uh, uh, going to side with you or give you the best outcome, or in fact, give you justice, but I will. Last week we talked about how Absalom was a very good politician. He was flattering people to make them think that he was for them and he was out to serve them. Uh, like I said, he was kissing foreheads, kissing hands, and kissing babies, trying to get people on his side, but he was pulling them away from his father. Now, uh, we have to ask ourselves the question when we're reading the text, um, is this because of what David had done? Or is this a part of just Absalom feeling that he's neglected by his father? And who knows what his mother was feeding him? Because that's an impact too. What you tell a child about their father when they're growing up has impact on them. If you speak negatively of them, that may be a bent towards that individual. And so we have to be careful in terms of what we say, what we do. And let's pick up here. Verse 10, 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 10. And it says, "But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron." Now remember, that's where David has his public anointing as king. Now he had his private anointing around when he was age 16 or 17. But publicly, it happens in Hebron, where he becomes king. So now Absalom, what he's attempting a coup, a revolt. He wants the throne. So that's telling us Absalom knew his brother's character, but now we're seeing his character. Does that make sense? We're watching his character unfold now. His brother violates his sister, but now he's staging a coup against his father. David's father-in-law wanted to kill him. All these family dynamics, this is some crazy stuff. And it's played out over and over again throughout human history. We even know some of those stories in our communities. And when I think about this, how Absalom was trying to ensure that he got the throne versus the 4 sons that Bathsheba had, because he may have noted how David was partial towards her. And we don't know how much, like I said, the role his mother played in telling him, look, you need to make some moves if you're going to be king, because I want to be the king's mother. You follow me? There are some men that are pastoring because their wives wanted to be first lady. God didn't call them, their wife did. I'm not going down that rabbit hole, but that's reality. I wanted to share with you on this part, Absalom's coup against his father, because before I became a pastor, this was probably about 20 years ago, we had a very prominent pastor. I want some of y'all to figure out who it is. So I had a very prominent pastor talk to me. I'll just put it that way. International. And he says to me that you need to make your move now. I'm sitting there listening. And he proceeded to give me a strategy to force my father out so that I could become pastor. And I refused to do it. And the real interesting thing is that I refused to do it, and then the individual would invite me in a very large church. They would invite me to speak, and I wouldn't go. Because from my perspective, he was encouraging me to stage a coup against my father because I had been serving and waiting for so long. So we don't know who was talking to Absalom to let him know you need to make your move right now. You have to be careful of what voices you listen to and people that encourage you, because sometimes you can move out of season. Other times you can move into stuff that ain't yours or don't belong to you. you're moving into an area to serve God where he hasn't called you to serve, which means that you're neglecting the area in which he called you to serve. So this week I was just thinking about what this person had said, and it's and the real kicker to me was about 5 years after that. My father comes to me and says, well, somebody said that you were trying to force me out of the church so that you could become pastor. And that hurt me so bad because somebody way up was trying to get me to do that. And I refused. And 5 years later, I get accused of it. Real interesting. So as we read here, I want you to think about the type of spirit that Absalom had and the mindset he had, that he wanted to stage a coup against his own father. Happens all the time. You've seen the mob movie where the son feels like it's his time, it's his season to run things, and he sets it up to take dad out, right? That's what this was. All right? And so he has, notice, first thing he does, he wins the heart of the people by telling them what they want to hear. He's telling them what they want to hear. And he sends out word, and get this, verse 11, and with Absalom went out 200 men out of Jerusalem who were called, and they went in their simplicity, and they knew not anything. In other words, all along the way, he deceived his father to go to Hebron, although he was trying to keep a vow from the Lord. So he lied on the Lord. He lied about his vow. He lies to his father to deceive him by why he's going to Hebron. He gets to Hebron, and he sends out, and he said, when you hear the trumpet sound, let everybody know Absalom is reigning in Hebron. All right? And so the 200 men that followed him, they weren't aware that he was staging a coup. You have to be careful who you align with, who you hook up with, who you collaborate with, who you partner with, because their intentions may not be the same as yours. You trying to do good. They got a whole nother agenda, all right? Verse 12, and Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gileonite, David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices, and the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. Now, Ahithophel is Bathsheba's grandfather. Are y'all seeing this now? He's Bathsheba's grandfather. Absalom is getting the grandfather of Bathsheba to come with him to go against his grandson-in-law. This is at the top of the kingdom. Can y'all imagine what's happening in the community? It's crazy up top that we see these dynamics. And so what I want you to see, that's not unlike our families. We have to be careful when those voices and ambitions come to cause us to kick against our father or our mother. got to be careful of that. Were there times in my 20s that I felt like I should have went out and started a church somewhere else, maybe moved to another state? Yep. Was there times in my 30s? Yep. Was there time in my 40s? Yep. You get the picture. 36 years of serving under my father, and in the meantime, I'm watching other guys go out in their 20s and starting their works in their churches, and I'd take over the church. I'm 50 years old. The Lord says that I call young men because you are strong. And so the years of real strength and power was given to serving to help somebody else's vision come to pass. But I had no right, no authority to try to stage a coup to take over the church. That would have been the spirit of Absalom. He didn't want to wait. He didn't want to give opportunity for anybody else to be David's successor. So I'm going to move to set myself up. Then not only am I going to stage a coup, I'm going to kill not only am I going to stage a coup, I'm going to kill my father. That's a dangerous place to be. Because honor your father and mother still stands. Probably more so under grace than it was under the law. Because you, as one who has been a recipient of the grace and mercy of God, how then do you turn against to devour someone who has given you life? But the adversary, that's what he does. He makes it all about you. Absalom, it was all about him. Now, David's history is not like that. We find one dip in his life, and that's Bathsheba. And connected with that one dip is Uriah. Connected with that one dip is a child that became sick after birth and didn't live. But if God says that you're a man that, speaking of David, a man after my own heart, what he's talking about, David's motivation and intention was always good until he ran into Bathsheba and he followed his own heart. Jeremiah tells us that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? That's why the regeneration and the infilling of the Holy Ghost, to have that empowerment, is so essential. Because we're encouraged to trust in the Lord and what? With all of our what? And lean not to what? In all our ways acknowledge him, and he will direct our path. But Absalom is plotting and he's planning, and he's going to take over the throne from his perspective. And so he's pulling key people from David, utilizing deception. Because why would David's grandfather-in-law be plotting against him, knowing that it was going to hurt his granddaughter? And it notes that he was a very wise man. That's why David had picked him to be one of his counselors, and some say chief counselor. They say that he was one of the wisest men in Israel. But yet Absalom deceived him. You got to be careful who you let talk to you. Well, some folks are smooth, male or female. They're smooth. You listen to some people talk, when they get through with you, you feel so bad because you say, man, God don't come down to eat breakfast with me like that. You let them tell every morning, the Lord joins them for grits and cheese. And you be feeling like, what's up with that? The Lord don't work with me like that. So if the Lord comes down and talks to you like that, you don't need this, right? His word is forever settled in heaven, but you don't need it. He's talking to you directly. Like somebody told me, he said, everything that God said is not in his word. I said, you're absolutely right, but everything he wanted you to know is. It's hard for us to handle the little things that's in the book, the simple things that's in the book. So now, it's interesting because for Absalom to become king, he's got to deal with them other sons. Can't just send them away because they might come back, right? So he's going to have to take care of them. All right, let's see. And the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. Verse 13, and there came a messenger to David saying, the hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. In other words, he's gathered people together unto him in Hebron. Verse 14, and David said unto his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, arise and let us, so all the servants who were with him at Jerusalem, arise and let us flee. For if we shall not escape from Absalom, make speed to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring evil upon us and smite the city with the edge of the sword. You think David knows his son? Is he thinking he had no problem killing his brother? He will have no problem killing me. Do you know that you have a better chance of one of your own relatives taking you out than a stranger? Mm-hmm. The heart is deceitful above all things. And when people are in close proximity to you, a lot of times people that are in close proximity to us that are family, we devalue them in terms of their ability, their talents. Pay attention to the spirit of Absalom. He initially gathers 50 men to set the foundation of the coup. He pretends to be devoted to God. Number 3, he pretends to be devoted to the people. Number 4, he dispatches spies in all of the tribes. 5, he sets up a camp or the core of his kingdom in Hebron. He gets 250 men that are not aware of his plot to take the throne. He convinces Bathsheba's grandfather to serve him against David. When Peter talks about that we should be aware of our adversary for he goes to and fro in the earth seeking whom he may devour, the concept of being devoured is wrapped around this concept of deception. The adversary knows that he's not going to be able to put certain things in front of you that will devour you. Now notice this, seeking whom he may devour. That doesn't mean that he's devouring them directly. He's giving them opportunity to be devoured. If they take the bait, that gives him access. All right? Verse 15, and the king's servant, or David's servant, said unto the king, behold, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king shall appoint. And the king went forth, and all his household after him. And the king left 10 women, which were concubines, to keep the house. He leaves 10 concubines to keep the house. Now, they belong to David, right? And the king went forth, and all the people after him, and tarried in a place that was far off. And all his servants passed on beside him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men which came after him from Gath, passed on before the king. These individuals were powerful warriors. So now they're fleeing, but they still have the assignment of protecting the king. They're powerful warriors. But so were the ones that Absalom had deceived to be with him. Verse 19, then said the king to Ittai the Gittite, why do you go also with us? Return to your place and abide with the king, for you are a stranger and also an exile. So this individual, he was actually a Gentile that had gone through the proselyte baptism to be a part of the community. And David says to him, verse 20, whereas you came but yesterday, should I this day make you go up and down with us, seeing I go where I may, return you and take back your brethren, mercy and truth be with you. And Ittai answered the king and said, as the Lord lives, as my lord the king lives, surely in what place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will your servant be. There are some people that will be dedicated to you, that will be loyal to you, will be committed to you. They're with you when you're right, and they're with you when you're wrong. When you're right, they're cheering. When you're wrong, they're helping you to get back on the right track. But either way, they're with you. This is, Ittai is one of those ride or die. He says, in life or death, I'm going to be with you. That's loyalty. Loyalty, you can't pay for that. I don't even know if you can earn that. Verse 22, and David said to Ittai, go and pass over. And Ittai the Gittite passed over, and all his men and all the little ones who were with him. Now notice, he's not only committed, he has his whole family with him. it's incumbent upon men that, particularly when you talk about serving the Lord, bring your family with you. That's important. And so he has his whole family with him, and he's committed to serving King David. Verse 23, and the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people passed over. The king also himself passed over the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over toward the way of the wilderness. Now remember, David had a few years of being settled. Now he's on the run again. He was on the run from Saul for about 15 years. Now he finds himself on the run again. Saul was family that was pursuing him. What's happening now? Family is pursuing him. We think it's a strange thing today when families don't get along. That's been the history since the fall. Some family members get along better than others. Sometimes people are the only saved individual or saved ones in their family. That puts them in a different position in the family as well. There's people in your own family that don't really like you. We're talking extended and nuclear. So David is hurting because he has lost his oldest son. Now Absalom is acting crazy, wants to take him out. See, there's nothing wrong with ambition, but it has to be ambition in the right direction. If you have to step on somebody or force somebody out, like it was suggested to me, I don't think that God is in that. Verse 24, and Zadok also and all the Levites were with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. But what does David have with him? The ark of the covenant. See, when the Lord is with you, it doesn't matter who's against you, even though sometimes you may have to take down and run. Look at somebody, tell them, ain't nothing wrong with running. Because then you live to fight another day, right? Mm-hmm. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had done passing out of the city. And the king said unto Zadok, carry back the ark of God into the city. If I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me again and show me both it and his habitation. Get the type of mentality that David has. He says, I'm going to, we have the ark here, now I want you to bring it back. I got where I wanted to be safely, now bring it back. And if the Lord still wants me to reign, he's going to bring me back to the ark. Wow. You talk about trusting God, Old Testament trust, New Testament faith. How many of us would have faith in God? Would we say, take the ark back? Or would we say, no, I'm keeping this with me so I can be safe? I ain't taking no. But David wanted the will of God for his life in spite of what he had done. He wanted the Lord's will to be done. How many of us really want the Lord's will to be done? Or do we really want the Lord to agree with our will so our will can be done? Look at somebody and simply tell them, God, say it like you mean it, cannot be deceived by your psychology. We can trick a man, we can trick a woman, we can trick the kids. But never ever can we trick God or manipulate him into doing what we want him to do. He will never be on our agenda. We must be on his agenda. So David wanted to make sure that he was in alignment with the Lord and that the Lord still wanted him to reign. And so he said, if the Lord wants me to still reign, he'll bring me back to where the ark is. All right? Verse 26. But if he thus says, I have no delight in you, behold, here I am, let him do to me as seems good unto him. If this is the end of the road for me, Lord, your will be done. Wow. Most of us would have been praying, take him out, Lord. Right? Get him. He did not. It's showing you the type of heart David has, because remember, he was that way towards Saul. Saul was trying to kill him. But he said, I'm not going to touch his anointed. Verse 27. So verse 27, after verse 26, where David really puts his life in the Lord's hand. The king puts his life in the King of Kings' hands. All right? Verse 27, and the king said also to Zadok the priest, are you not a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz, your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will tarry in the plain of the wilderness until there come word from you to certify me, to let me know that it's safe for me to come back. Zadok, therefore, and Abiathar called the ark of God again to Jerusalem, and they tarried there. Verse 30, and David went up by the ascent of the mount, Olivet, wept as he went up, and had his head covered, and he went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered every man his head, and they went up weeping as they went. David is in a wounded place. David is grieving. David is mourning. David is disappointed. Maybe he's disappointed with himself. If I would have been a better father, my oldest son would be alive. Absalom wouldn't be doing this. So maybe he's disappointed with himself. He's disappointed with how his family has turned out. But in spite of all that, the one he's really concerned about is, am I still in the favor of God? Because when God removes his favor, we got problems. Am I still flowing in the favor of God? Feels like everything's falling apart. And the first thing that comes to your mind, yeah, God's not concerned about you. And one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray you, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Now notice what he did. He did not pray against Absalom. He said, Lord, the wisdom that you gave to Ahithophel, turn it to foolishness. He didn't wish any harm on any of them. You get that? But let his counsel make no sense. In other words, confuse the strategist, or Absalom's strategist, confuse him. And it came to pass that when David was come to the top of the mount where he worshiped God, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him, his coat rent and earth upon his head. This man is out of breath. He seems to be overwhelmed by something. All right. Verse 33, and unto whom David said, if you pass on with me, you shall be a burden unto me. Now, some commentators say that it was because he was old and infirm that he was having challenges. I don't know. But that's what some of the commentators say. He said, but if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant hitherto, so will I now also be your servant. Then may you for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. David has prayed that the Lord would change Ahithophel's counsel to foolishness. Now he runs upon someone that's been known to be loyal to him. Now I want you to go in and pretend to serve Absalom, but cause confusion with the counsel he's receiving. All right. Verse 35. And have you not there with you Zadok and Abiathar the priest? Therefore it shall be that when the thing whatsoever you shall hear out of the king's house, you shall tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priest. Remember, Absalom sent out spies into every city, right? What is David doing now? Sending a spy into the camp. Don't that sound like modern day? Russia has spies here. We have spies in Russia. China has spies here. We have spies in China. All right. This is happening on a global level. What I'm saying to you, these things happen. Things start out with individuals, families, community, nations. The behavior in the family ultimately spills over into the nation. Spying starts out in families. Somebody don't trust somebody, right? Back in the day, if you was messed up over whether you're a female messed up over a dude, or a dude messed up over a female. I mean, if it, back in the day, the old people used to say that girl got that boy's nose wide open. You could drive 2 semis in his nose. In other words, talking about she got his brain wrapped up. Whether you're male or female, when you get like that, you will climb trees with binoculars. Hide in bushes. You might even go to the point of disguising yourself, dressing up like you're somebody else. So, spying is nothing new. So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. All right? Now, so I was going to go into 16, but I want to deal with this a little bit. About how we as saints of God should not plot and plan against our brother or sister in the house of God. A house divided, it's still true, cannot stand. What you're seeing is a divided house. And so what God is going to have to do is unite it. Sometimes, in order for things to be united, some things have to be removed. This happens in communities. This happens in churches all the time. How many have heard of church splits? You think that just happened out of nowhere? That's been brewing for a long time. And part of it is when we look at Absalom and we look at ourselves, we have to be careful of what we do in our search for personal significance. And that's been a challenge. I think it happens in all churches, but particularly in predominantly black churches, because the significance that has been often searched for in society has been long in coming. And so people get in church and they can get positions and titles and be elevated to this and elevated to that, where their significance is in their titles. Their significance is in their position. Their significance is in people identifying them by their title. Don't you call them by their name. Pastor is not enough. I have to be apostle. I have to be prophet. I have to be evangelist. Brother is not good enough. Sister is not good enough. And here's the interesting thing. Why would you want to be something God has not called you to be? Someone asked me 2 years ago, is the Lord moving you into a position where you to be an apostle? I said, absolutely not. I said, I'm trying to get right what he's called me to do. Well, I want to add something else. You adding all these titles to yourself and you ain't even fulfilled the one yet. It's interesting because the Apostle Paul early on says he was called to be an apostle. Later on when he writes, he says, an apostle of Jesus Christ. Verse when he says called to be, in other words, I have fully now moved into what he has called me to be. Because sometimes when they call us pastor, we're really not there yet. We got some development, some growth, some learning to do to actually become a pastor, to actually become a shepherd. It's hard to pastor people if you don't know yourself. You have to know what the Lord has called you to do and be. And we, in our search for significance, and that's what Absalom was doing. He was first searching for significance. This man was already royalty. As a child of God, as a saint of God, you're already royalty. Look at somebody next to them. You don't need to stage a coup. Mm-hmm. Staging a coup is tearing somebody else down so that you can be lifted up. Talking down about somebody else so somebody will see you as more significant. Peter prays in the book of Acts. I believe it's in chapter 4. And he says, Lord, stretch forth your hand to do miracles, signs, and wonders. The apostles were marked by the actions that followed their message. That's what we're missing. If we talk about that God is a healer, then there need to be signs that God is healing. Wonders and miracles. And that's the importance of testimony service that I'm going to start encouraging you all to come out on the third Sunday. That's the importance of testimony service, because we can hear of what the Lord has done and what he's doing. And you hear, because we don't have time to do all that on Sunday, but on the third Sunday night, you can come out and talk about what the Lord has done and give your testimony and encourage somebody else. The apostles had miracles, signs, and wonders following them. But it just didn't stop with them. So did the deacons. But it didn't stop there. So did all the saints with no names, no titles, no positions. How do you think the gospel was in certain places when Paul went? There were already believers there. Because the no-name saints that you don't read about witnessed to somebody, prayed for somebody. The Lord brought deliverance through them. So don't worry about if people don't know your name. Because if the Lord has called you to be a 30-fold saint, if you fulfill that 30%, you are 100-fold. If he called you to be a 60-fold saint and you fulfill that 60, you are 100-fold. You understand what I'm saying? So you can't judge yourself off of what somebody else is doing. I'm just as good as my daddy. No, you're not, because you're different. My father told me before he passed, he said, he said, you're pastoring now. He said, I don't know that I could effectively pastor in this time. He said, people are different. When he was pastoring, you could set people down. If you don't use wisdom these days, when you have people to take time to heal, which is true, you can get a lawsuit. I remember coming up at True Apostolic under the late Elder Henry Hill. He would bust people out publicly. I would see grown folks up in the front of the church crying like a baby because he done busted them out in front of the entire congregation. And I was so afraid of this man that when he died, I would not go to his funeral because I thought he was the one that was going to sit up in his casket. Yeah. Mother Hill, when she passed, I was there. And I remember my mother sung, she sung, There Will Be Peace in the Valley. Do you remember that? Evangelist Serge, well, you were so young, yeah. She says, there will be peace. Anyway. And man, I was just sitting there crying like a baby. No more sorrow, no more sadness. And so we have to be careful about who we stage a coup against, who we try to bring down to lift ourselves up. Absalom has no idea what he's really doing. Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the boomerang, and the brothers and the sisters came up that didn't know how to work the boomerang. You don't have to know how to work it with this. It's coming back. it's coming back. And so that's what Absalom is dealing with. Now, I want to prepare you for next week because remember I said that Saul still has some people that are loyal to him even though he's gone. But David is king. And that's true with that's true with companies, that's true with heads of families, that's true with churches. As strange as it sounds, I'm really just learning how to pastor piercing faith because my father's pastorship, it always runs in when there's transition. And there were certain things that I would not do because he said, don't do that. So I didn't. Even with the name changed. You see, y'all don't know this, but even with the name change, I would not have changed the name unless he approved it. He said, well, why are you considering that? And I explained it to him. I laid it out. He said, I think that would be a good idea. So I did it. There's some other things that he said, well, I don't think that's a good idea because you don't know this, but I wanted to sell the church pre-COVID. He said, I don't think that's a good idea. And we needed it during COVID. Because if we would have rented a place, they'd have closed it down and we would not have been able to have church. We stayed open through COVID. And I believe the Lord blessed us because we paid off the land through COVID. Right? But I don't want another situation like COVID to come to be able to build a church. But here's what I've learned. And this is one of my tangents. But this is what I've learned. You can pay off land with a survival mentality, but you cannot build with a survival mentality. That's what I ran into. I'm telling you about me. You can pay off land with a survival mentality, but you cannot build with a survival mentality. You have to have thriving thinking. And if you're used to being in survival mode and making things happen, it takes a shift in you to be able to move to build. Some people think they're ready to build and they're still in a survival mentality. In our housing situation now, it took me moving out of a survival mentality to get it done. And it was scary to me. Moving out of St. Paul was scary to me. Y'all hearing me? Some of you looking at me like, I've been in the suburb for 30 years. But since we moved up here, when I was 4 years old, I had never lived outside of St. Paul, and I had never lived out of a 5-mile radius of the first house we lived in here. And that was an interesting thing about my father, because we never lived in an apartment, ever. He was renting houses at first, then he bought one. We never lived in an apartment, always in houses. But I just moved outside of a 5-mile radius of the first house we lived in when we came to Minnesota. So when I tell you that I prayed the prayer for this year of Jubilee for Lord, change this church, Lord, change me. Because I'm not a natural risk taker. I know how to survive well. When I need to get resources, I know how to connect the dots and get resources. When you've needed something, have I always got it? All the time. But this is different. When you have to depend on Him to get it done. You know, somebody said to me, they said, well, you should know exactly when things need to be built and done and all this other stuff if you're supposed to be the leader. And I said, well, Abraham left home. He didn't know where he was going. I at least know I'm going to St. Paul, right? So I think I'm in good company. All right. But we thank the Lord. Forgive me for my tangent, but I just felt I needed to share that with you. But thank the Lord for those of you that have come out tonight. Think about your families, your family situations, and the roles that you play in your family, and how God can use you in your family to create health and wealth and not stage a coup. Give honor to whom honor is due. Respect to whom respect is due. But love everybody. Amen. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for watching live stream. We're glad, as always, that you took time out of your evening to be with us. And God bless you and have a wonderful rest of your week.